Peter King is nice enough to be with us. Football morning in America. There's so much to chop up with Peter. Let's just go right down the laundry list. I'll just, as a prelude, we'll get to the Cardinals and what is going on with Michael Bidwell and all that in a bit, but we are close to the draft. Peter, is this a predictable or unpredictable draft for you as we sit here a week out from draft night?
It's one of the most unpredictable drafts, I think, ever. A general manager, or actually this was an agent. I'll give you a quote from an agent and a quote from a GM. The agent said, all you guys who do mock drafts, people are going to be laughing at you guys after the draft because they're all going to be all over the place. And I agree with him. And Brad, the reason is that 9 of the top 11 teams in the NFL in this draft have either first or second year coaches and or GMs. I mean, you look at the Cardinals. The Cardinals are in an absolute power position in this draft at number 3. And they have a general manager who's never run a draft before. They have a head coach who's never been in position to pick players and run a draft with somebody before. Tell me how in the world you get a reading on what they're going to do. The Houston Texans with a very powerful new head coach in DeMeco Ryans, a former coach. He's going to have a lot of say in what they do. And it's why I think it is a fool's errand to suggest that after Bryce Young, that really we know anything about who's taking who's trading up for who. I thought Peter Schrager had the best idea for this, and I've been thinking about it for 2 weeks, ever since I heard that Houston is not crazy about CJ Stroud at number 2. I have thought the smartest thing to do in this draft is to have Indianapolis trade from 4 to 2 and trade their high second round pick to move up 2 spots and basically give the Houston Texans something that they really want, which is an edge rusher they don't have, either Will Anderson or Tyree Wilson. That is a little bit more of the macro than you asked for, but I think it is all going to be mayhem a week from tonight.
Okay, so the Cardinals, though, Peter, they sit here. They already have a quarterback. Yeah, he's hurt right now, but they have a quarterback. So they're in a really different position, and as you said, a position of power. What makes the most sense to you, the people that you speak to, about what the Cardinals will, should, may do at 3?
I don't think it. I mean, Brad, I'm dead serious when I say this. They're doing a very good job inside the Cardinals because I truly have no idea what they're going to do. Obviously, they would love to be able to trade this pick. But I think one of the things that hurts the Cardinals in the market value for this pick is sort of the diminution of people's or of the impression that people have as the draft grows closer for CJ Stroud. I think that hurts the Cardinals. I think it also hurts the Cardinals that there is a division of opinion. I almost think right now there are more people in the league high in this round who like Tyree Wilson over Will Anderson. I never thought that was going to happen. Anderson is basically a perfect character guy, great production in the SEC and all that. But I think people like Tyree Wilson's quick twitch a little bit more than they like Will Anderson. So I think that might hurt them a little bit too, because there isn't a dominant, absolutely must-have player other than the 2 quarterbacks in this draft. The one other thing I think about the Cardinals right now, I remember covering the first Carolina Panthers draft in 1995. And at the time, Kajana Carter, a running back from Ohio State, was clearly the number 1 prospect in this draft. But the Panthers did not want to pick him. The Panthers wanted to pick Kerry Collins, a quarterback from Penn State. So Bill Polian, who was running the franchise, traded from 1 to 5 with Cincinnati. Cincinnati moved up, picked Kajana Carter. Carolina moved from 1 to 5, but only got in return, I think it was the 39th pick overall, but a good second round pick for moving down 4 spots. And I remember asking Bill Polian after the draft, how come you didn't get more when you moved from 1 to 5? And he goes, because there was no market.
Yeah.
Nobody really wanted the pick. And so I determined I could get Kerry Collins and pay less for him, financially at number 5 than number 1. And so I decided to do that, even though I didn't get as much as obviously I would want to. I still got something for him, of value. And that to me might be what Monty Ossenfort could face a week from tonight, which is, okay, he probably really wants to get out of this pick because, Brad, the Cardinals might have the worst roster in football. They might.
Correct.
A lot of people around the league, if you give them sodium pentothal, they'll say they're really among the worst roster, if not the worst roster. And so they need a lot. Yeah. And so if I'm Monty Ossenfort, I wouldn't really worry about what people would say. You didn't get enough for that deal. Sometimes you just have to play where the market is. And if he doesn't have a lot of options, he might have to take the best option available to him, which, and again, I'm just going to make this up. Let's say he trades down to pick a number 6 or 7 and only gets a second round pick for it. And everybody's going to say, oh man, you got bad value. He said, well, I didn't have much of a choice, but that's the advice I would have for him. Remember the Carolina Panthers in 95.
And here, Peter, and it's a great story there, I think, for fans to hear, because in my circles and just here in the Valley, when I hear from fans, what I'm hearing is, okay, trade out, get more assets. You have DeAndre Hopkins sitting over there. He's an asset. You're not going to get a whole lot, it sounds like. I think the one deal out here, and this is transitioning over the Cardinals, is when Budda Baker shows up and doesn't want to be here, and whether it's contract related or not, I think it's contract related, as most of them are. This is about as bad as it's been in Arizona in a long, long time. So I'm going to switch over just to that on the field first, and then we'll get to the Michael Bidwell, Terry McDonough, Ron Miniger stuff. Your view of the Cardinals and from the people you talk to nationally about the team itself. You touched on it briefly about the roster, but what is the national view of what's going on here in Arizona on the field again and hire, new GM and all that?
That it's a borderline disaster. That's all there is to it. But there's nothing that Monty Ossenfort and Jonathan Gannon can do about Terry McDonough and Michael Bidwell. It's not their fight. It doesn't really matter. It's almost like Chris Grier is sitting there in Miami last year and he gets his first round pick taken away from him because of something that he didn't do. So what can Chris Grier do after the first round pick gets taken away from the tampering with Tom Brady? All he can do is come into work the next day and say, okay, I don't have a 1 next year. What do we do? And it's the exact same thing. Monty Ossenfort can't spend any time worrying about the fact that his owner might get suspended if these allegations are true. If these allegations are true, Michael Bidwell has to get suspended, and deservedly so. But I think the way I look at this is it's almost a rare opportunity, because now you have the ability as a new coach and a new GM to come in and say, all right, well, like Jonathan Gannon, I bet he has said some words to this effect, either internally or verbally. Okay, it's us against the world. Yeah. Nobody thinks we can do it. We're at the bottom of the league right now. So what are we going to do about it? We're going to work our rear ends off and we're going to go find players. That's why this draft is so important, and quantity in this draft is so important. Now, the Budda Baker thing, I think everybody knows that DeAndre Hopkins is not long for this world. My guess, just a guess, is that he ends up in New England. But I also think that if I were the Cardinals right now, I would do what I can to repair the relationship with Buda Baker, because he clearly is. Maybe he's not a team leader on the level of what Larry Fitzgerald was, but he's a huge team leader. And I think a lot of guys in that locker room would just have slumped shoulders if they come to work on the first day of training camp and Buda Baker is with Team X and not with them.
Yeah, I mean, it's very deflating out here for the fans. I'm focusing on the fans quite a bit on this one. I want to get over to Michael Bidwell. So fans are asking me, sending in notes, would Commissioner Goodell force a situation like in DC with here and Michael Bidwell?
He's not gonna sell the team. I mean, look, I don't know what he's gonna do. The team is in his blood. He's been the owner of this team and it's been in his family forever. He spoke very glowingly about the history of the Cardinals at the Super Bowl. And I don't expect unless there's something really dire that we don't know right now, I don't expect the NFL to do anything other than discipline him. I mean, Michael Bidwell internally might not be the best boss in the world, but he certainly hasn't done the stuff or approached the stuff that Daniel Snyder is alleged to have done in Washington. So I don't view this as them forcing him to sell the team at all. I just view this that if he actually did what Terry McDonough alleges, which is to give the de facto temporary general manager, Terry McDonough, and current head coach Steve Wilks burner phones to communicate illicitly with the suspended general manager, Steve Keim. If that happened, Michael Bidwell has to be suspended. And the investigation will tell whether it did happen. The evidence seems to be pretty convincing as of right now, but that's why you investigate something rather than knee-jerk it.
Okay, last thing for you. Is there anything out here I haven't brought up to you about the Cardinals that you feel like, Brad, you're missing this point? Fans may want to look at this direction. Anything about the Cardinals that you're seeing?
Well, I think that the one issue that you see is the attempts on social media, excuse me, by Kyler Murray and probably by the Cardinals as well, to sort of rehab his image and to make sure that all of the rumors, whispers, slights, public slights that have gone the way of Kyler Murray, that these get addressed and that Kyler Murray understands that he has an issue with leadership and an issue in his locker room, and that he's got to devote time, especially after getting paid $1 jillion. Now it isn't just devoting time because this is the team that drafted you. You signed a contract, a significant extension, the richest contract in the history of this organization. You signed it. Now you got to live by it. And now you have to do what that contract basically requires you to do in an unwritten way. You've got to lead this franchise, and you have to be more of a guy in that locker room who everybody looks to as the North Star of this organization. It's kind of telling that early on we talked about Buda Baker. They can't lose him. He's so important to the psyche of this organization. Almost always you say that about the quarterback. And you don't say that in Arizona. And I think that Kyler Murray has to change that. The one last thing I would just say about the whole situation is that I believe that one of the things that smart people do, and Monty Ossenfort's a really smart guy, is he realizes, he looks around his team and he says, okay, here's where we need to start applying the Band-Aids. Here's what we need first. And so that's why, almost regardless of who they pick, if they trade down to number 7 and pick Peter Skoronski, a guard, maybe a tackle, but probably a guard, My whole point is pick the guy in this draft or the two guys in this draft, regardless of position. The Arizona Cardinals have to look at their team right now as an absolute rebuild. And so don't worry about what the public says. Geez, why are we picking a guard? Why are we picking this corner? Why are we picking? You need 100 things. Just make sure that what you start with is as sure a thing as there is out there.
As always, appreciate your time and your insight, Peter. Thanks.
Okay, Brad, take care.
Football Morning in America. You can find all Peter's content, NBC Sports, and we're back with more after this timeout.